They call it intelligence work, but intelligence is never neutral. It's a hunt, a game of patience, silence, and teeth. Every predator stalks for survival. Mine is no different, except my prey is information, secrets. And tonight's hunt begins with a man who believed the survival of Earth justified everything else. They tell you history is written by the victors. A comforting lie. History is written by the survivors, and the truth is buried with the dead. But some truths refuse to stay buried. They claw their way out of the dark, carried on whispers and fragmented data streams. They tell a different story. Not of heroes and villains, but of monsters who believed they were heroes. Our file today concerns one such monster. A man who saw himself as the protagonist of Earth's grand story. A patriot, a savior. UN Undersecretary Sci-Fi Errinwright. To understand the conspiracy he architected, you must first understand the world that created him. You must understand the fear. Before the Protomolecule, before the ring gates changed everything, the solar system was a powder keg, waiting for a spark. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was in a state of quiet, managed decline. Bloated, overpopulated, groaning under the weight of 30 billion souls. It was a giant, slowly bleeding out, kept alive by the resources bled from the belt. And then there was Mars. Young, unified, technologically superior. A militaristic society forged in a hostile environment, driven by a singular purpose: to make their new world green. While Earth looked to its past, Mars looked to its future. It was the rising power. Earth was the ruling one. And in the cold calculus of history, there is a term for this dynamic: the Thucydides trap. An almost gravitational certainty that when a rising power threatens to displace a ruling one, war is inevitable. Sci-Fi Errinwright saw this inevitability clearer than anyone. He saw the projections. He knew the technological gap between the UNN and the MCRN was widening with every year. 2, he believed, in the deepest parts of his soul, that a war was coming, and that Earth was going to lose. His colleague Christian Avasarala saw the same data and sought to manage the decline, to maintain a fragile peace for as long as possible. Errinwright saw that as a death sentence, a slow, managed surrender. His solution was radical. He decided to start the inevitable war himself, but on his terms. Before Mars was ready, before Earth's advantage was completely gone. His entire worldview can be distilled into a simple, terrifyingly potent phrase he uttered himself: Earth must come first. It's a sentiment that echoes certain radical ideologies from old Earth. Movements like Earth First were built on a similar foundation. A belief in an impending apocalyptic collapse, brought on by a destructive force that threatened the natural order. For them, it was industrial civilization. For Errinwright, it was Mars. These movements justified extreme, often illegal, direct action, what they called monkey-wrenching, under a self-proclaimed higher moral law, the defense of Mother Earth. Sci-Fi Errinwright's conspiracy was the ultimate act of political monkey-wrenching. He saw himself as a protector, operating under the only moral law that mattered: Earth's survival. And any action, no matter how heinous, any lie, no matter how vast, any atrocity, no matter how many died, was not only justified, it was necessary. He wasn't a villain in his own story. He was the hero, the only one with the courage to do what needed to be done. And that is what made him so dangerous. A protagonist needs a weapon, a tool to enact his will upon the world. Errinwright found his in a man as ambitious and ruthless as himself, the corporate titan, Jules-Pierre Mao. Their alliance was the dark heart of the conspiracy, a perfect symbiosis of state power and private ambition. Mao, through his corporation Protogen, had stumbled upon the greatest discovery in human history on a forgotten moon of Saturn. An alien bioweapon of unimaginable power. He saw in it the key to godhood, the next stage of human evolution. But his research was monstrously illegal. He needed cover. He needed resources. He needed a powerful friend in the UN. Errinwright was more than a friend. He was a partner. He provided the political cover, the UN funding laundered through black budgets, and the intelligence to keep Protogen's operations hidden from prying eyes like Avasarala's. In return, Mao promised him the ultimate weapon, a biological super soldier, a tool that would not just level the playing field with Mars, but erase it entirely. It was a partnership born of mutual delusion. Errinwright saw Mao as a brilliant but manageable asset, a glorified arms dealer, building a weapon he could seize for Earth when the time was right. He fundamentally misunderstood Mao's ambition. Mao wasn't interested in patriotism. He was a true believer in the Protomolecule. He saw Errinwright not as a master, but as a wealthy patron, a political shield to protect his sacred work. He was willing to sacrifice anything for it. His fortune, his company, even his own daughter, Julie. This fundamental conflict, Errinwright's loyalty to Earth versus Mao's loyalty to his own messianic vision, was the critical flaw in their alliance. A hairline fracture that, under pressure, would shatter their entire enterprise. They thought they were using each other. In the end, they were both just fools, dancing on the edge of a cliff, too arrogant to look down. To start a war, you need a story, a simple, powerful lie that everyone can believe. Errinwright's was a masterpiece of deception, executed in 3 distinct, escalating acts. A strategy of ratcheting crises, each one designed to make the last irreversible, narrowing the political options until war was the only path left. Act 1. The Canterbury. Protogen's stealth ship, the Anubis, planted a fake Martian distress beacon near the ice hauler Canterbury. When the Cant dutifully responded, the Anubis destroyed it with nuclear torpedoes. The strategic goal was twofold. First, to create an immediate, severe water crisis on Ceres Station, a massive distraction that would pull the system's attention away from Protogen's real target, Eros. Second, and more importantly, it was the first brushstroke in the masterpiece of framing Mars. But there was a complication. A shuttle, the Knight, with 5 survivors, including one James Holden. Witnesses. Act 2. The Donager. The MCRN flagship Donager rescued Holden's crew. To Errinwright and Mao, this was an unacceptable loose end. So Protogen's stealth ships were dispatched again. They ambushed and destroyed the most powerful warship in the Martian fleet. The official narrative, screamed across the system by a grieving Mars, was that Earth had committed an unprecedented act of war. The lie was taking hold. The conflict escalated from a suspicious incident to a full-blown military engagement. Peace was no longer a viable option. And still, Holden survived, a persistent, irritating variable.
Broca, do you read? I'm in.
Spectre, your timing is impeccable. Report.
The archives from the Donager incident. They weren't just sealed, they were rewritten. I'm looking at the raw sensor data from UNN listening post Epsilon 12. Errinwright's office sent a Priority 1 directive 20 minutes after the Donager went dark. The order was explicit. Scrub all energy signatures inconsistent with MCRN drive plumes. Reattribute all torpedo launches to a single vector originating from the Knight shuttle. They didn't just hide the stealth ships, Broca. They painted Holden as the one who fired first.
He manufactured the hero and the villain in the same stroke. A tidy piece of work. Is the directive traceable?
It was triple encrypted, routed through a Martian shell server. But the source handshake is unmistakable. It came directly from the Undersecretary's private comms channel. This was his hand on the trigger. Sending you the decrypted file now.
Good work, Spectre. Go dark. The network will be in touch. Act 3. Ganymede. This was the final brutal stroke. With tensions at their breaking point, Protogen unleashed its new toy. A protomolecule hybrid soldier. It was set loose on the Ganymede station, attacking both UN and Martian marine positions indiscriminately. To the public, and to most of the UN government, the story was simple. Mars had a terrifying new bioweapon, and they had used it. It was the final, unforgivable provocation. The casus belli Errinwright had so carefully constructed was complete. There was no longer any room for diplomacy, no path for de-escalation. There was only war. A war he had started. A war he intended to win. Every grand conspirator needs a willing fool, a puppet, to legitimize the treason. Errinwright's was the most powerful man on Earth, UN Secretary General Esteban Sorrento Gillis. But to call Gillis a simple fool is to misunderstand the artistry of Errinwright's manipulation. Sorrento Gillis was a former revolutionary, a political prisoner who would become a popular, charismatic, but ultimately weak leader. He was a man obsessed with public perception and his place in history. Avasarala, in her typically blunt fashion, called him the bobblehead, a man who would passionately agree with whomever had last whispered in his ear. Errinwright didn't just feed Gillis lies. He preyed upon his deepest insecurities and his most profound ambitions. He knew Gillis feared being seen as a weak, indecisive figurehead, so he framed aggressive military action as the hallmark of a strong, decisive leader. He knew Gillis craved a legacy that would echo through the ages, so he painted the war with Mars not as a bloody conflict for resources, but as a noble crusade. It was Gillis's chance, he whispered, to be the man who united humanity in the face of first contact. He gave the Secretary General a tailored narrative of Martian aggression, complete with falsified intelligence and carefully edited reports. Each step, from the Canterbury to Ganymede, was presented as an unprovoked attack that demanded a powerful response. By the time Gillis authorized the preemptive strike on Mars's orbital platforms, an act that led directly to a Martian nuclear missile striking South America and killing millions, he was convinced it was his own idea. He believed he was writing his legacy. In reality, he was just a pen in Sadovir Errinwright's hand. After his arrest, Errinwright delivered the most damning and accurate assessment of the man he had so thoroughly broken. If he was talking to a janitor, he would be passionately talking about a mop. A man of great passion and no conviction. The perfect puppet. But while Errinwright was building his shadow government, another power was moving in the darkness. Christian Avasarala was building a resistance. Her investigation began not with evidence, but with intuition. A lifetime of navigating the treacherous currents of power had taught her to recognize the patterns of deceit. Errinwright's story didn't fit. The official reports were too clean. The coincidences, too convenient. She began her own covert intelligence operation, trusting only a handful of assets, like her loyal operative Cotillard, and later, the Martian Marine Bobby Draper, a woman with no loyalties to the viper's nest of UN politics. The turning point came when she discovered her own assistant, Soren, was a mole, feeding her movements directly to Errinwright. It confirmed the conspiracy was real, and that she was a target. Errinwright, believing he had her contained, made his fatal mistake. He exiled her on Jules-Pierre Mao's private yacht, the Guanxi Yin, on a farcical relief mission to Ganymede, a golden cage where he could monitor her every word. He underestimated her, and he underestimated her friends. Avasarala turned the cage into a weapon. Using smuggled communications gear and Bobby Draper's unique powers of persuasion to seize control of the ship, she finally had a secure channel. She broadcast a single, encrypted file to her most trusted allies deep within the UN command structure. It contained a recording of Sadovir Errinwright, in his own voice, confessing to treason. A confession likely secured during a moment of weakness, when he feared Mao had abandoned him and sought Avasarala's help, foolishly believing she was still his friend. It was checkmate. Errinwright controlled fleets, armies, and the ear of the Secretary General. He wielded the full institutional power of Earth. Avasarala had none of that. She was isolated, hunted, and disavowed. Her only weapon was the truth. Her victory was a masterclass in asymmetrical information warfare. She didn't fight his fleets. She didn't challenge his political power directly. She found a single piece of data so undeniable, so damning, that it made his power irrelevant. Faced with the public broadcast of his own treason, Sorrento Gillis had no choice. The House of Cards collapsed. Sadovir Errinwright's shadow government was dismantled. He was arrested, a traitor exposed to the light. The official records will remember him as a footnote, a madman who nearly shattered the solar system. But that is too simple, too clean. He wasn't mad. He was a patriot, twisted by fear into a monster. His conspiracy was born from a genuine, fanatical belief that he was saving the world he loved from certain destruction. And in his attempt to save it, he nearly burned it to the ground. These shadow structures, they are not anomalies. They are an inherent risk in any system where power is concentrated, where fear can be weaponized, and where one person can decide that the ends justify any means. The official records will call him a traitor. The archives will call him a footnote. But we know the truth. He was a warning. The network is always watching for the next one. Are you?